Welcome to another episode of Serial Streamers. You might be wondering, what is Serial Streamers and who am I? Serial Streamers is a virtual true crime TV club for people who are out there binging all the true crime documentaries like myself. And maybe you don't have a partner or a bestie in your life who is as into true crime content as you are. So you don't really have somebody to talk about these wild documentaries with. And that's where Serial Streamers comes in. Like, this is your podcast. This is your YouTube channel, if that is you. If you find yourself watching these viral true crime docs and you want to talk about them with a community of like-minded people, that is Serial Streamers. So all of the Serial Streamers episodes live on the Murderish podcast feed. So make sure you're following Murderish in your favorite podcast app. But if you prefer to watch the video version, all these episodes are also on my YouTube channel, and that's at Jamie on Air. That's Jami on Air. And also follow me on social media at Jamie on Air, because that is where I go to the comments and we talk about all these wild true crime docs. We talk about our thoughts, theories, hot takes, unpopular opinions, you name it. It is such a fun community of engaged people who are into true crime content. So if that's you, follow along. Follow me on YouTube at Jamie on Air. Follow the podcast, Murderish, and follow me on social media at Jamie on Air. All right, let's get into the documentary that we're going to be covering today, and that is Con Mum on Netflix. Now, the American translation is Con Mom, because this one is Con M-U-M, because, you know, it's takes place in, I want to say, London and other places. So, Con Mum on Netflix, and this one was a lot more wild than I expected going into it. Now, this documentary surrounds a man named Graham Horninggold. Now, Graham is a Michelin-starred pastry chef and pastry consultant. And he meets a woman named Heather Knueck. I think that's her name. I'm probably going to say it wrong, but he meets a woman named Heather, and they begin a relationship. They eventually get married, and Heather realized they get married, and they also have a business venture together because they have like a pastry consultancy business. And Heather realizes early on that Graham has a lot of unprocessed trauma that he really has not dealt with. And it all stems from his childhood. The fact that he was raised by his biological father as well as his stepmom, but he never knew his biological mother. And Graham and Heather talk about in the documentary that Graham's father was not a nice guy. In fact, he was abusive and he was an alcoholic. So Graham does, and again, he doesn't know his bio mom. He doesn't know what happened to her. They never speak of her in his family home. So he's just kind of got all of this unprocessed childhood trauma. We find out that Graham was born in Germany on a German army base in November of 1974. And he doesn't grow up feeling that connection and true love from a family, because again, he didn't get it from his bio mom because he never knew her. And his stepmom and father, or at least his father, was not a good guy. So he just really always had that longing of wanting to feel like he belonged and that people loved him. The only information that Graham really had about his biological mom was that he had her name, which was listed on his birth certificate, and her name was listed as Hatton Horninggold, previously Mahmoud. So he begins Googling his mother's name. He had estimated that, so this kind of begins like his curiosity. He probably always had curiosity about who his mom was, and he starts Googling her, and he wants to obviously know who she is. So he estimates that she's probably in her 70s or 80s by now, but he couldn't find anything online. And so he eventually gives up that search for his mom. Then Graham and Heather become distracted with something else because they find out that they're expecting a baby, and they're extremely excited about this baby. But their bubble kind of burst, not fully, I'm sure they were still excited about their baby, but their bubble kind of burst when COVID hit in early 2020. So Graham and Heather start spending a lot of time together at home, and they made the best of it. They're cooking, they're bonding, excited about what the future holds with their new baby. So then out of the blue, Graham receives an email from a woman claiming to be his mother. And she says that she'd been searching for him and that her name is Dion, but her name, I guess, was formerly Teresa. I don't know if I had like a mini stroke or something, but like I was watching this documentary as I was on the treadmill. And I want to say she said her name was formerly Teresa, but I guess the important part is she's now saying her name is Dion in this email to Graham. And she says that Graham was taken away from her in Germany and then taken to England, and that she had no control over this. In fact, she goes on to tell Graham that he was forcibly removed from her and that she just had no control over this. And Graham's thinking, wow, a lot of people didn't know that I was born in Germany. And it made him think, maybe this is my mom, if she knows that piece of information about me. That she, that I was apparently taken away from her in Germany and then moved to England. Not a lot of people know that about me, so maybe this is legit. So Graham responds to her email saying, is this for real? No jokes, no scams. So basically, he's already kind of sus on this woman from the beginning, thinking, I don't know, like, it sounds like it could be legit, but then again, maybe she just Googled me, because he was a Michelin-starred pastry chef, and certainly there had been a lot written about him online. So she could have found a lot of information about him online somewhere. So Graham responds to Dion with a series of questions, kind of testing her knowledge to make sure that she really does know who he is and that this really is his mom. So he asks her things like, well, what's my middle name? When was I born? And she gets all the answers correct. So this is the point at which he's like, maybe this is legit. Maybe this is my mom and I'd love to meet her. And this is the start of the shit show that would become Heather and Graham's lives. So Dion reaches out again to her son and she's like, hey, I'm staying in Liverpool. I really would like for you and Heather to come visit me. So they do. And there's video footage, probably taken by Heather, of Graham walking up to this woman, Dion, and just embracing her like, this is my mother that I have been missing for 45 years. And they're just holding each other. And it's very sweet. And at that point, Heather describes that her husband, Graham, kind of felt like he was somebody's baby at that point, which he had never felt in his life. And it felt really good for him because for 45 years, having not met his mom, he says he felt instantaneous mother-son bond with her. And Graham and Dion looked a lot alike and they had similar mannerisms, according to Heather. So this is all adding up that this is probably Graham's mother. And Dion is immediately telling Heather, I'm here for you. I'm your mother-in-law. You're my daughter-in-law. So Dion is like quickly just wanting to like erase the last 45 years and get super comfortable and make them super comfortable with her, even though they haven't known each other for, damn near 5 decades. And sure enough, Dion is spending a lot of time with Graham and Heather. She's there with them during the pregnancy. She's rubbing on Heather's belly, which looking back, I'm sure Heather's like, ick, but we'll get to that. Then Dion requests to speak with her son privately. And so they go to a private room and she tells him, I've got 6 months to live. I have a brain tumor and marrow cancer. So this is a real mindfuck for Graham because he's so elated that, oh my gosh, I found my mom after 45 years. We have this bond and we're going to be mother and son now forever. And then lo and behold, she's going to be gone in 6 months' time. So it's had to be a huge mindfuck for him. Dion tells Graham, I really want to see the ocean for the first time. Can you take me? So Graham's like, sure, I'll take you to the ocean. Like he's basically going to do whatever it is that his mom wants because he loves her, he's missed her, and she's a dying woman. And this is when he learns more about his mom. And he learns that she was born in Singapore and that she has multiple businesses all over the world. We're talking farms, passion fruit, mangoes, palm oil in Indonesia and Malaysia. So she's got all these like complex businesses all around the world. And Graham notices that his mom is always on the phone speaking to like business associates. So she appears to be this very busy businesswoman and she's always on the phone and she speaks 18 different languages, which again, was very impressive to Graham. And Graham notices that the way that the farm workers, the people who worked for his mom, spoke to her, it was almost as if she was their mom too. She came off as a very motherly figure who took care of people. Oh, call me mom, call me grandma. And it also seemed like she was apparently giving back a lot to communities in need. So she was giving back, out packages, food to the poor. Dion seemed like she's just this elite human being, like this perfect angel, because she's got business acumen. She's very charitable, and she just seems like a perfect angel. As Dion and Graham's bond is just growing stronger and stronger by the day, Dion says she wants to visit her son in London. And to Graham's surprise, she picks a 5-star hotel, caviar, the bougie works, like champagne, expensive champagne, everything. And the hotel staff knew her, so they're greeting her by name, acting as if they'd seen her a million times before, and basically saying like, yeah, Dion's one of our best customers. So she's being legitimized by people, and Graham is seeing this. So like people in the hotel are saying, yes, we know her. She's our best customer. She is talking to people on the phone and, talking about all her businesses and business associates. So it really did come off like she's this very wealthy businesswoman, and Graham bought it. And I can see why. And then Dion tells Graham, listen, there are 2 sources to my wealth, my extreme wealth. Number 1, my business acumen, because of course. The second one is because Dion is apparently the illegitimate child of the former Sultan of Brunei, and that her family had given her a lot of money, apparently, the royal family, and that she was incredibly wealthy. And in my mind, I'm like, here fucking goes the royal heiress scammy bullshit. We have seen this so many times. I mean, I know this story personally. If you haven't listened to my other podcast, Dirty Money Moves, season 1, it's all about the story of this phony Hollywood heiress. This is all real, true story, who I met back in 2017, 2018. And she ripped the bank off, the bank that I was working for $15 million. And I went on to investigate her and found out that her story is so much bigger than just that $15 million scam at the bank I was working for in downtown Los Angeles at the time. She was a prolific scam artist, but she had sold herself her whole life as being a very, very wealthy heiress to a large fortune. And Anna Delvey, wasn't she like a phony heiress of some sort? Like, this story has been told. So it's like, if somebody comes to you and says that they're like an heiress, they are wealthy from, related to the royal family, it's too good to be true. Like, it's not true. Okay. This is like a play right out of like the scammer's playbook. Just run for the hills if somebody tells you that they are those things. Then Dion starts buying really expensive gifts for her son and for Heather. We're talking like Prada, designer shoes, bags, jewelry, expensive cars. She buys her son a Rolls Royce, saying that basically this will erase the 45 years that we haven't been able to be together. This will make you happy and change your life. And basically kind of like just push under the rug the fact that I haven't been in your life for 45 years. And she also buys him a Range Rover. The car dealership staff knows her. So again, Dion's being legitimized right before Graham's eyes. These people, they know her. So it appears as if she's this wealthy heiress businesswoman that like just jet sets all across the world, and everybody knows her because she stays at all these 5-star hotels and visits these expensive car dealerships all the time. And she ends up buying Heather, Graham's wife, a BMW as well. So she is just like rolling in the dough, apparently. Then Heather goes into labor 2 months after meeting Dion for the first time. And it's a boy, but the labor is extremely difficult. In fact, she had to get a blood transfusion after she had the baby. It was really scary, really dangerous, really risky, I should say. And you can just imagine Heather and Graham had really been through a lot with this pregnancy and the labor. So while they're totally going through it, and that, they had a really stressful birth with their son and Heather's health was in jeopardy. Well, now Dion has to find a way to bring the attention back to her because she's a fucking scammer. She sends an alarming message to her son and basically says that she went to the bathroom and there was blood filled like in the toilet. And she sends a picture of urine that is completely red. Like it doesn't even look yellow. This is going to come in later, so I'm describing it, but it's like bright red. And of course, Graham is alarmed because he's like, oh my God, my mom, she's on death's door. Now she's peeing blood. I need to take care of her. But he's also trying to take care of his wife, who just had a very traumatic birth and he just had a baby. He wants to bond with the baby, but his freaking mom is like, I need you. I'm sick. I'm peeing blood. So Graham just goes through this really traumatic birth with his wife. Had a really hard birth with their son. But now he has to deal with his very sick mother who is apparently peeing blood. And so Dion is tugging at Graham's heartstrings. And she essentially love bombed him. Now, this is my assessment. I think, Dion was taking a play from the Classic Scammers Handbook 101, and she's love bombing him and Heather, buying them expensive gifts, saying, I'm going to be the best grandma to your baby, yada, yada. Because she's basically setting him up for the big scam. And so Graham is sort of tugging, emotionally conflicted between, do I stay with my wife and my brand new baby, or do I go take care of my mom who's peeing blood? And ultimately he decides, I have to go see my mom. I can't leave her alone in the hotel room. And so her emotional manipulation works, and he goes and sees his mom, and he leaves his wife, who just had a traumatic delivery of their son, and he leaves. It's not ideal, but he leaves to go take care of his mom. So then Graham is faced with, well, my mom is obviously very sick, but she's alone. But I need to be with my family. So probably the best thing is to move my mom in with my wife and my son. It wasn't ideal, but it was like all he knew to do. Like he had to do the right thing. And you see video footage of Dion being like, I'm going to be the best grandma ever. I'm going to hold the baby. He's never going to cry because I'm going to hold him. And she's just like laying it on thick. However, after Heather gives birth to she and Graham's son, Dion's attitude toward her changes, and she starts calling her names and saying like, you're a very stubborn lady. And she starts criticizing Heather for the amount of time that Dion gets to spend with her new grandchild. And she's just being like this overbearing, mean mother-in-law. And to me, like while I was watching this, I've watched enough scammer documentaries to know that she's trying to isolate Graham because she knows that Graham is her target and that she can tug at Graham's heartstrings given everything he's been through in his childhood. And she needs to get him, in order to do that, she needs to get him away from Heather, who's probably very smart and kind of on to Dion at a certain point. And so she's trying to isolate Graham from Heather. And eventually it does work. So Graham is caught in the middle between what he describes as like an Asian mom telling Heather how to look after her baby and being overbearing. And then on the other hand, you've got Heather, who's tired, who's weary, who's also outspoken. And she's saying, excuse me, this is my son. This is my house. And I will say how I take care of my son. I don't need this woman, Dion, my mother-in-law, telling me anything. And so Graham is caught in the middle of trying to please both women. 2 months after Graham's son is born, Graham and his mother begin talking about a trip to Switzerland to go get all her money, apparently, and so that she can transfer it to Graham. So basically, Dion is telling Graham, listen, we need to go to Switzerland. That's where my bank accounts are. That's where my bankers are. We need to sign some documents. So in order to facilitate the transfer of wealth, because I'm going to die, but I need you to get all my money. Graham's probably like, yeah. Sign me up. Dion says that the banks and her bankers are waiting on her. Everything is set up. All they need to do is travel to Switzerland, sign the documents. Everything will be sorted. And then Graham can go home to his baby and look forward to the great wealth he's about to inherit. Meanwhile, Heather's at home with the baby. And while she's probably exhausted. She's probably like, bitch, bye. Like, get this woman out of my house. Like, she's probably happy to get just a small break from the overbearing mother-in-law that she's just recently begrudgingly inherited. So, of course, when they go to Zurich, Switzerland, they check into a 5-star hotel because, of course, his mother is apparently the illegitimate child of the Sultan or former Sultan of Brunei. So, like, why wouldn't she check into a 5-star hotel? And during that time, Graham notices that his mom is talking all the time to her Swiss bank representatives. But he says the conversations were always away from him. So he wasn't really hearing what she was saying. But she did tell him that, son, listen, you have to have at least $20 million to even have an account at this bank, which I call bullshit. I'm a former commercial banker for 20 years. That's what I did before I started podcasting. And it's not that if you're not rich, you can't have a bank account at a certain bank. Probably anybody can open a bank account at any bank, but you can't maybe be part of certain sectors of the bank. So like there's certain sectors of the bank that are for high net worth individuals, but it's not like they're like, oh, wait, you only have $1 million? No, you can't open a bank account here. I don't think they can discriminate in that way. But anyway, she's just basically trying to confirm over and over to her son that, listen, I am very rich. Graham's longtime friend, Juan, who lives in Switzerland, is going to be meeting up with Graham, and Graham is super excited to introduce him to his mother, Dion, who had not been in his life for 45 years previous. And Juan says that he had looked at Graham his whole life as a mentor in the pastry chef world, and he kind of learned from the master being Graham. And Graham is giddy as he introduces Juan to his mother, Dion, like almost like childlike. Then Graham finally gets to meet the banker to speak about the trust funds, the money that's going to be transferred from Dion to him. And apparently this banker is a very, very, very high up executive at this Swiss bank. And then Graham says he and his mom are invited to speak with the top executives at this bank. But he's like, it's kind of odd because it was very quiet when we got there. And basically the bank was closed. So they were invited to come into the bank during off hours, which apparently you got to be somebody very special to be invited to do that when the bank is closed. And Juan goes with them during this meeting where Graham is apparently going to be signing all these important documents so that the wealth can be transferred over to him when his mom dies. And they go to this very exclusive room. Everything seems legitimate. And Juan and Graham are just blown away by like the 5-star service they're getting from these really high up executives at this Swiss bank. And it seems like, Graham's mom is extremely wealthy. And so much so that the bankers are willing to open up the bank headquarters in Zurich to give access to a private room at the top of the bank or above the bank. However, Graham's like, well, what's weird is like, we didn't even sign, he didn't say it's weird, but he's like, we didn't even sign documents at that meeting. Like he went to the meeting thinking he's going to sign all these documents, go back to his family, but that's not what happened. No documents were signed, much to his surprise. And this was all explained away as if like, listen, this is like Dion talking. She's like, listen, my wealth, it's very complicated because the wealth structure, it's complicated because I have businesses all over the world. So it's going to take some time to get all these documents in order. But don't worry, let's just stay in Switzerland a few more days. We'll get all this sorted out. We'll sign these documents. You'll go home to your family. And of course, Graham can't help but think about all the ways that his family's lives are going to change drastically. Like all the things he'll be able to accomplish with his family with this newfound wealth, all the money he'll be able to give back to people in need. Like all of this is going through his mind. And Heather, meanwhile, back in London with the baby, she's probably like, TikTok, bitch, die already. Like she does not like Dion, and rightfully so. So she's probably like, bitch, die already. Like, give us the money and go. You're really annoying. But while Heather is back in London with the baby alone, because Graham's, stay in Switzerland is now being extended because his mom's like, oh, the documents aren't ready yet. Heather checks on their bank accounts. She sees there is a substantial transfer of money into Graham's name. So I didn't quite understand what that meant. Maybe the money was in both of their names, Graham and Heather, and then she sees all of a sudden that some of their joint money was then transferred into an account that's only in Graham's name. I think that's what happened. And so she questions her husband about it. And Heather finds out that this money that Graham has separated into his own name is going to his mother, Dion, which is kind of a head scratcher because it's like, well, isn't she rich? Why does she need our money? And apparently Graham explains this away to Heather and says, listen, my mom needs this money because COVID caused a lot of complications with her not being able to access her own money. So she's just going to need to like borrow a few thou from us. And all I'm thinking is like, here we go. Like, here we go. This is another playbook from Scammers 101. I mean, they basically like, they wet your whistle. They get you, they love bomb you. Like they show you how wealthy they are. They legitimize themselves as a very wealthy person. And like, oh my God, I've got this. I've got so much money. I've got caviar. I'm buying you cars, yada, yada. So when the scammer goes and asks you for a few bucks, it's not that big of a deal because you're like, well, oh yeah, you can't access your money right now. Of course, I'll pay for the $20,000 hotel, or I'll pay for the $10,000, this or that. You're going to pay me back. So of course I would do that for you. And this is what's going through Graham's mind. Like, he's happy to oblige when his mother's like, listen, Graham, I need a few thousand. My money's all tied up because of COVID. I'll hit you back later. So Graham obliges and he starts paying the massive 5-star hotel bill totaling over 20,000 euros. And he's thinking like, I'm easily going to get reimbursed. So I guess this isn't a big deal. And listen, he hasn't seen his mom in over 4 decades and she's about to die. So he's like, who am I to say no? Like, of course I'm going to cover this hotel bill and caviar and champagne and Prada purses, yada, yada, yada. And this has Heather worried because she's like, Dion presented it as if she was paying for everything. But now Graham is paying for everything. So what is going on here? And Dion promises, listen, this is never going to happen again. This is just like a glitch in the system. I'll get my money. I'll pay you back. We'll never do this again. Don't worry. And she continues manipulating Graham and his family. And Graham is also putting Heather at ease because he's fully immersed in his mother's bullshit. And he's like, listen, Heather, don't worry. Everything's fine. We're going to get our money back. She's rich. Don't worry. And the trip to Switzerland was only supposed to be 4 days. But then Graham calls Heather and he's like, oh, shoot, the documents aren't quite ready. I'm going to have to stay a few more days. Well, then a few more days turns into a week and then turns into more time. Meanwhile, this is when Dion starts sort of like digging her talons into Juan. And she's like, oh, Juan, you're just like a grandson to me. Call me grandma and I'll call you grandson. And she's just like, basically manipulating him just like she did to Graham and Heather. Then Dion looks at her son and she's like, how much money should I give your friend? Should I give Juan? How much? 1 million? 2 million? 20 million? Like, how much should I give him? And then she's like, and tomorrow I'm going to buy a house for you, Juan. So she's just throwing her money at these people. She's like, Juan, you're my grandson. I'm going to buy you a house. How much money do you want? 5 million, 6 million? I gotcha. But she explains to Juan, as any scammer would, she's like, listen, Juan, I don't have the money right now. However, I just need to make a few moves to get my money in order. Just got to wait a little bit. But of course, this is a full-blown play out of the scammer's playbook. Like, she is totally manipulating Juan as she's done to everybody else apparently in her life. Then Juan is alone with Dion and she says, I always help people. I'd like for you to give me a little something. So this is when she's going to try and scam Juan. And she's like, listen, I need to get some money from you, but this is between you and me. Do not tell my son, Graham. This is our secret. And Juan's like, listen, Grandma, I have no money to give you because I'm like one of those people that you would call like a normal person. I don't have any money to give you. So this is not going to work. And this is when Juan sees red flags with Dion. He's like, you know what? Something's up, but he's hesitating to tell Graham because Graham is just so entrenched with this woman at this point, thinking this is my mom. I love her. She loves me. And Juan is afraid that if he says anything negative about Dion, that Graham is going to end his friendship with Juan, and Juan would hate for that to happen. But he's definitely seeing red flags. And meanwhile, Dion keeps pushing her son to stay in Switzerland longer and longer and longer, trying to put him off, saying, oh, the documents aren't ready, but they're going to be ready. Just stay a little longer. And meanwhile, like Christmas is approaching and he needs to get home to be with his wife and son on what's going to be their very first major holiday together. But he doesn't want to leave his mom because she's sick. And if he leaves, she's going to be all alone. And that would be kind of shitty for a son to do. Then Dion meets Marcus, who's also in Zurich, and he's looking for investors, he along with his business partner. And he and his business partner meet Dion, and she presents, of course, as being very wealthy and that she's related to the Brunei royal family, the whole bit. And eventually, Dion presents Marcus and his partner with a contract that basically says, I will give you $2.5 million investment in your company. And in return, I want 20% ownership in your company. And she starts calling them granddaughter and grandson because this is what she does. And they start calling her grandma because she just insists on it. But then, just like she did to Juan, Dion asks Marcus, her new friend, and she's just invested in his company. She asks him for 2,000 euros because she's having trouble getting her money due to COVID. And Marcus and his partner, just like Graham, are like, oh yeah, we'll give you this money because they bought her bit hook, line, and sinker. They thought she's super wealthy. She's super sweet. She's our grandma. But then they go on to spend like multi-thousands of euros on this woman. They buy her like clothing, bags, champagne. And they show all this video footage or like these pictures of her wearing like fur coats and expensive rings and Prada bags. And it's just like, ugh, this woman is just living the life off of she's just grifting her way through life off of all these people telling them she's rich and then going, oh, can I get 2,000 euros? Can I get a mink coat? Can I get a Prada purse? Don't worry, I'll hit you back. I'm like the illegitimate child of the Sultan of Brunei after all. I mean, come on. But meanwhile, as she did in the past with Juan, she tells Marcus and his business partner, do not tell Graham about you spending money on me because this is our secret. Don't tell my son. And obviously, this is her trying to keep her targets separate from one another because there's power in numbers. And so if they start intermingling and talking about the fact that they're spending money on this very wealthy woman, then her grift is going to be up. So she has to keep them separate. Meanwhile, Heather, Graham's wife, is becoming more and more concerned, thinking that Dion is completely trying to push Heather out of the picture, and she's trying to isolate Graham. And there's all this footage. I mean, Dion is just happy-go-lucky with Graham. She's like, love you, my son, my son. And there's all these like funny, silly pictures of them like feeding each other food and doing all kinds of weird things. And meanwhile, Dion's being a nasty bee to Heather, her daughter-in-law. But Graham doesn't see this though. He just sees his sweet, funny mom, rich mom. And Graham is becoming more and more concerned about his mom's health. She's very gaunt, as he describes it. She's laying around a lot. And she's also like waking up in the middle of the night, going to the ledge and threatening to jump off. So she's basically threatening suicide over and over again. And this is just another way for her to manipulate her son. And it's just completely disgusting that she's doing this, but she just wants to seal the deal so bad with him and make him think she's distraught because she's going to die anyway. So why don't I just off myself? And he's trying to stop her and he's having to deal with that. Meanwhile, you know, he's left his wife and his baby alone and he probably has guilt over that as well. So this whole thing was just a huge psychological torture and manipulation and abuse, at the hands of his mom. And Dion just keeps pressuring her son to stay in Switzerland with her, even though like the holidays are right around the corner. And sure enough, Graham doesn't make it home to his family until Christmas Eve. So Heather's thinking like, I might have to spend this first Christmas alone with our brand new baby while he's taking care of his mom and signing some documents in Switzerland. But he does make it home just in time. And this part pissed me off so bad. But when Graham does decide to leave his mom in Switzerland because he needs to go spend the holidays with his brand new baby and his wife, She starts sending him sad pictures. She's like, "You left me alone in my hotel room. Boo-hoo, I'm so sad." And it's just so gross and so manipulative. Like this woman her manipulation knows no bounds. And Heather and Graham end up fighting over Dion because Heather's had enough. And then Heather tells Graham she's trying to make plans for them as a family to go to New Zealand to visit her family and introduce her family to the baby. They still haven't met their son. And at the same time that Heather's telling her husband, we need to go to New Zealand so we can introduce our baby to my family, here goes Dion. And she starts texting and calling her son saying, "I'm going to die like in a few days. I have just a few days to live. Like you need to come see me." And Graham is extremely conflicted. He's like, "I don't know if I should go to New Zealand with my wife and my child, or if I should go take care of my mom who's alone and going to die in a few weeks, apparently, or a few days." And ultimately, Graham decides to let his wife and his brand new baby take a flight to New Zealand alone. And he decides to go stay with his mom. And this is the point at which I think their relationship probably changed for the worse. Then there's a man named Peng. Now, Peng apparently is like an entrepreneur. He's apparently developing this like cutting edge cancer technology. He meets Dion and Dion kind of latches onto him and he finds out that Dion has cancer, multiple forms of cancer. And he offers her a free state-of-the-art cancer treatment. And instead of accepting his cancer treatment, what do you think Dion does? She's like, "Yeah, no. Instead of that treatment, because listen, I'm going to die anyway. Who needs treatment? Can you just give me $50,000 in cash?" And Peng does it. So instead of giving her this state-of-the-art cutting-edge cancer treatment, he's like, "Here's 50,000 euros or whatever it is in cash." And she just goes and spends this money like she cannot spend it fast enough. And again, that money that she got from Peng in cash, she then goes and spends it with her son, Graham. So now all of a sudden she's spending all the money again. She no longer needs money from Graham. This is probably further legitimizing, her wealth to Graham because he's like, oh God, now she's got all this cash. She's buying coats and jackets and caviar. And, so she's basically like, she's stealing from Peter to pay Paul. Like she's able to get an influx of cash. She then goes and spends it right in front of Graham. And Graham's like, oh yeah, she's rich. Then Heather finds out that there are credit cards in Graham's name at the request of his mom. She finds out, and these credit cards are racking up an astronomical amount of debt. So again, this is when Heather realizes, shit, we're being manipulated. Graham is being manipulated. And something is not right here. And Heather enlists Juan's help, saving Graham from his mom's scams. So this is when Heather and Juan both figure out together, like, yeah, this does not seem right. And Graham is in a lot of trouble. And Graham admits in the documentary that at that point, he'd already spent about 80,000 pounds on his mother. So like, was he ever going to get this money back? And that was Heather's fear. And while Dion told her son and daughter-in-law that all the 3 expensive vehicles that she'd bought for them were a gift, in reality, those car notes were in Graham's name. And so, yes, in the beginning, his mother was paying the car notes. So it did appear that even though the notes were in his name, he'd never have to pay for them. His mother was always going to make the payment. But when she stopped paying, and she did stop paying, those car loans were now Graham's responsibility, and those payments start being debited from his and Heather's accounts. And the car debt totals about 300,000 pounds. Then there's a certain point when Dion kind of figures out that Graham is probably becoming a little sus on her. So she goes to her new target, which is this gentleman named Peng, who he's an entrepreneur. He has that like cutting edge cancer technology that he's developing. Dion goes to Peng and basically says, I don't give a fuck about Graham anymore. Okay. Like he drained my bank accounts and I don't want anything to do with him. So she lies to Peng and says that Graham is a scumbag. And basically then she just sets her sights on scamming Peng out of his money, her new grandson. Then Heather starts doing some research on Dion and finds out that she'd used many, many names over the years, but she was able to find marriage records. So apparently Dion, or whatever her name was back then, had been married in 1970, 1984, as well as 1994. But Heather finds that the date of birth, that Dion's date of birth on the marriage certificates is different on each certificate. She also finds that Dion's father's name is different on all 3 of the marriage certificates, and that all of her named fathers were now all deceased. So then Juan confronts Graham with his suspicions about Dion. And now Juan and Heather are kind of teaming up on this. And he gets Graham's attention. Graham's not fully sold on the fact that his mom's a scam artist, but it was enough information for him to go poking around a little bit in Dion's 5-star hotel room. And he finds a packet of red food coloring. And now this triggered a memory of when she sent him that picture saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm peeing blood." And he thinks, could that be what she used to doctor that photo and make it look like she's very sick? But in reality, she used this red food coloring, because red food coloring is a weird item for anybody to have. It's not to say that you're a scam artist just because you have it, but he's kind of putting 2 and 2 together. And Graham also finds in her hotel room that she's got all these medications, but she has every single medication for other ailments, but everything but cancer. So none of the medications that she has are for cancer. And this is when he realizes, I don't think my mom has cancer. Graham begins to realize that he is very likely being scammed by his mother. And is she even his mom? And now he's completely overwhelmed with the debt that he's racked up to loan to his very wealthy mother. So he confronts Dion. Meanwhile, Heather goes to the police, but they said it's not going to be seen as fraud because this is his mother. At the same time that Heather and Graham are really hot on, Dion's trail as they're about to expose her for being a scammer, Pang, her new target, also begins poking around because months had passed and Dion had promised to make like a multi-thousand, euro, pounds investment, whatever, in his business. And she had still yet to give him a dime. Meanwhile, he'd given her 150,000 euros. So he's kind of in the same position as Graham. He's kind of like shit up a river. He spent all this money on this apparently very wealthy woman, and she's not given him a dime that she's promised. So he starts poking around, and Pang ends up calling Graham, and Graham feels sick over the news that he's getting from Pang because it's essentially validating everything that he and Heather were feeling and basically knew that, oh my gosh, like we've all been had. And it made him so sick. And this is when Graham realizes that a lot of people around him had been told by Dion, don't tell Graham. Like that was the running theme, don't tell Graham. So he realizes now that he had been kept away from her scamming other people right under his nose, but he just wasn't aware of it because they weren't telling Graham that they were giving Dion money. And apparently Dion had previously refused to do a DNA test. I guess Graham wanted to do one early on when he first met her just to confirm like that, hey, you are my mother. But now he's pushing the issue and he's like, listen, Dion, you're going to do a DNA test and we are going to resolve this once and for all. Like we're going to find out if you really are my mom. So they both submit a DNA swab to a genealogy company. And then they get the results. And Dion is Graham's mother. And I was a bit shocked by this because, of course, I thought it's going to turn out that she was just a scammer the whole time. I don't know how she was able to get all the answers correct about his middle name and his birthplace and all that. But I was kind of shocked to find out that she was actually his mom, although they did kind of look alike. But the DNA proves this is Graham's mother. But it's kind of more of a mindfuck because Graham's like, I've been conned by my own mother. It's just, and then Dion disappears. And Heather continues to research and investigate Dion, and she finds that Dion did have a criminal record in her past. So at the age of 41, Heather finds out that Dion was convicted of receiving cash and jewelry by deception. And this would have been when Graham was about 9 years old. And she also had previous shoplifting charges. So now all the pieces of the puzzle are coming together. This woman's a scammer. Like, she's been a criminal and a scammer her whole life. 1 year after Dion ripped her own blood son off for thousands upon thousands of euros, she calls him from Malaysia. And she's like, "Hey, son, my son." And he's like, yeah, hi, Dion. And basically she's like, "Listen, I'm sorry for what I've done to you." So she's basically admitting, that she scammed him without saying those words. But she's like, "Listen, I'm sorry for what I did to you, but I can't change it." She just kind of throws her hands up in the air. She's like, well, it is what it is. And Graham is just like, wow. This man has been through so much with an abusive alcoholic father, a mother who was never there. And now all of a sudden she's there and he's on this roller coaster with her. He's taking care of her. He's spending money on her. He's bonding with her. He's allowing her to hold his son and bond with his wife and his own son. And only to find out that she just fucks him over when she meets him. And the only motivation she had to get back in touch, to get in touch at all with her son was so that she could live the high life and rip him off. Like, it sucks. And apparently no criminal charges were ever filed for Dion for what she allegedly did to her son and others, all the allegations that were documented in this documentary. And sadly, Heather and Graham end up splitting up. And it seems like, although they don't explicitly say this in the documentary, it seems as if Heather takes their son and moves to New Zealand, where her family is, and Graham stays in London, which I just thought was really awful. Again, Graham has been through so much, and then here he has this baby and all the things he just went through with his mom and being scammed by her. And now his son is, I don't want to say taken away from him, but he's not with his son anymore. He's separated from his son. And again, I don't know what happened in their marriage. And I'm not even saying anything bad about Heather. Heather also probably has some really strong feelings about her husband leaving her right after she essentially almost died giving birth to their son. And he left her alone to go be with his mother. And so she probably has some feelings about that. And they'd been through so much together. And so I don't know what motivated the decision for her to move to another country. And now Graham, I guess if he wants to see his son, he's got to get on a plane and go do it. So I don't know what that dynamic is. I just thought it was really sad, given all they both have been through, that they didn't end up together in the end. So it does seem like this Dion thing, or whatever her real name is, really did a number on them and may have been the catalyst. It may have been the straw that broke the camel's back in their marriage. Overall, I was just kind of sad watching this documentary. I mean, this is his own mother who comes back into his life. And it's also just jaw-dropping to see these con artists at work. And they all kind of do the same thing. They might do it in little different ways, but many of them, they love bomb you, not only emotionally, but with like gifts, like, oh my God, here's a car, here's a this. And at the same time, they're legitimizing themselves as this very powerful and wealthy person. They sometimes pretend to be, from some royal family or being an heiress to a fortune, like, oh, I'm going to get all this money, but I just don't have it yet. Can I get a little bit from you in the meantime? So, and they kind of wet your whistle. They buy you all these gifts. They show you the money that they have before they go and ask you for money, because then it legitimizes them and makes you comfortable, puts you at ease so that you'll easily give up your money. So then they start living on your money. And before you know it, you're not getting any money from them. You're only giving the con artist your money. And I can just totally see how Graham was like the perfect target, because he was so vulnerable given his childhood trauma and his longing to want to be part of a family and wanting somebody to love and nurture him. So really, really sad documentary. I would definitely suggest you watch it. It's a really easy watch. It was only about want to say it was like 90 minutes long. It's only one long episode, but check it out. But I, really am enjoying watching these documentaries and sharing them with all of you. I love this community that we're building of serial streamers, of, just like-minded people who are all into true crime content. We're all watching these documentaries. And now we have a place to discuss them. So make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel at Jamie on Air. That's where all these serial streamers episodes live. If you just want the audio version, you can follow my podcast called Murderish. Murderish is available in all podcast apps. The audio version of all the serial streamers episodes, those live in the Murderish podcast feed. And make sure you're following me on social media. I'm on TikTok, Instagram at Jamie on Air. That's JAMI on Air. That's where we go. I'll post clips of the episodes, the serial streamers episodes, and then we'll talk about our thoughts, our theories, our hot takes, our unpopular opinions. We will talk about everything concerning these true crime documentaries that we're all watching. So make sure you're following me in all the places so you can keep up and be a part of this serial streamers true crime TV club. We're having a lot of fun. Thanks so much for joining me on another episode of Serial Streamers. I will be back with a brand new episode very soon. Until then, ladies, be that bitch when it comes to your safety. Always cover your drink when you're at a bar. Do not walk to the restroom or anywhere alone. Keep your lights on at night and always be aware of your surroundings. See you next time.